listeners. Welcome to the Grindhouse Syndicate. Unfortunately, your hosts are a little busy right now. Things got a little messy in the studio. They thought they knew scary movies, but couldn't make it past the second round of my little game. So I'm in control now. And I'm here to tell you what really went down in Woodsboro. So lock your doors, check your closets, and pray you make it to the end. Because it's gonna be a scream.
What's up, everybody? Call us Dewey because it appears that we have survived Ghostface's attack. I am your host, a bumbling cop whose hobbies include getting shit-talked by my little sister, falling in love with controversial reporters, and surviving knife attacks. And that is my co-host, a video store worker who loves horror films, is secretly in love with our final girl, and has a serious hard-on for Jamie Lee Curtis. And welcome to the 4th episode of our Halloween special, where all month long we cover movies that take place on or around Halloween. And today we are finally talking about one of the best slasher films ever made, and hands down our most requested movie, Wes Craven's Scream from 1996. Holy shit, we are finally here. We are finally talking about Scream.
The movie that single-handedly brought slashers back into the mainstream and completely changed the face of horror in the late 90s.
Definitely. Now, this is not typically a movie known for taking place around Halloween, but about a year ago, we were watching it and we got to talking after, and we realized this movie totally takes place in October, which is why we have been saving it for the past year. Now, we aren't going to tell you how we came up with this just yet, but we will definitely point it out when we get there. But I promise it is a Halloween movie.
And by the way, that intro is the first and only time I will ever be referred to as having a hard-on for Jamie Lee Curtis.
I put that in there just for you, actually. Yeah, this is an amazing movie. I definitely remember the first time I seen it. I was a little kid, and there's a couple spots I remember having to hide my eyes. You know, it freaked me out. I can't remember exactly how old I was, but I want to say I was, I don't know, around like 8 or 9. And yeah, man, just a movie that really sucked me into horror, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know how old I was the first time I seen it, but I do remember being thrown for a loop at the ending.
Oh, yeah,
So
definitely.
I do remember that. I don't remember any other details about seeing this for the first time. This is another one of those outside of that one thing I remember. Feels like I was just born with this. Like, I seen it so young. There's never a point that I remember there not being a ghost face.
Well, yeah, you were like 2 when it came out, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember we went on a family vacation to visit some family, and my mom was talking to a family member at their house, and in order to keep me occupied, they put on HBO where Scream came on, and I sat there and watched it while they sat in the kitchen and talked and smoked some cigarettes, and,
Yeah, cigarettes.
yep, and that was the first time I ever seen Scream.
Yeah.
Definitely. Just a heads up, there is so much to talk about when it comes to Scream. There is no way we can fit it all into this episode. So after this, we're going to head over to the Patreon and do a little after show. It's definitely been a while since we did one of those. So if you're a fan of this film, you are definitely not going to want to miss that. By the way, this is probably our longest episode, at least on paper, that we've ever done. And as Halloween nears closer and closer, we are down to one last Halloween episode. And next week, we are going to pick up right where we left off last year and deep dive into Halloween 2 from 1981. That'll be the finale.
The bleeding eyes, Michael Myers.
The one that takes place in a hospital.
I think that's a really good follow-up to this, considering the entire third act of this movie is the end of the first Halloween. So let's jump into Halloween 2.
Yeah, good point. Good point. So with that being said, are you ready to finally dive into Scream?
Yeah.
Let's
I've been waiting to do this one for a while.
All right.
Hello, boys and ghouls. If you want to stay up to date on what's going on with the show, talk about or submit your movie requests, or just say die, then I got good news for you. You can always find us at one of our social media accounts or our official website at Grindhouse.Horror.Pod.com, Facecrook at the Grindhouse Syndicate Horror Podcast, Instascam at GrindhouseSyndicate.Horror.Pod, and many gore, which you can always find links for in the show notes as always. And you know what I always say, the morgue, the merrier. So please subscribe or follow for alerts on new episodes. Now, back to the show, kiddies. Frights, camera, action.
And if you really love us and don't want us to get gutted like a fish after losing a horror trivia game, give us a review. Scream is a 1996 American slasher film directed by Wes Craven and written by Kevin Williamson. It stars David Arquette, Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, Matthew Lillard, Rose McGowan, Skeet Ulrich, and Drew Barrymore. The plot follows high school student Sydney Prescott and her friends who, on the anniversary of her mother's murder, become the targets of a costumed serial killer. It was produced by Kathy Conrad and Carrie Woods of Woods Entertainment. It released on December 20th of 1996, had a budget of $15 million and a box office of a whopping $173 million.
Damn,
That's huge.
A lot of money today.
Yeah. Yes.
And I just noticed when you went through that cast, outside of Drew Barrymore, those were not like super household name actors, and now every single one of those are household names due to the success of this movie.
Definitely, and I don't include really much of it in this episode, but there are a massive amount of really big time famous people that was almost in this movie. So it was really surprising that the cast we got was pretty unknown for the most part back then. All right, so back in the mid-1990s, an unknown actor turned writer who had recently sold his first script was having a bit of trouble getting his next idea in motion. Until one night, he was sitting at his friend's house. He was house sitting all alone when he came across a TV show about serial killer Danny Rolling, aka the Gainesville Ripper. This freaked him out so bad that he ended up calling one of his good friends, where they spend hours talking about horror movies, putting him at ease, which of course gave him the idea for his next script called Scary Movie, which would be about a group of teens who had seen all the classic horror films, knew all the cliches, and were also being hunted by a masked killer. An arresting fact, it took him only 3 days to write the entire story, and he did it all while listening to John Carpenter's Halloween soundtrack on repeat. He also wrote a 5-page outline for possible sequels.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, that's where the success of this movie comes from. He put the best score in all of horror on while he was writing the movie.
Yeah, and that also, it makes sense why you see a lot of that movie played in the end, and a lot of the end is actually using the score.
Yeah, that's one thing that I really love about the end of this movie, and I'll talk about it a lot more when we get there, and especially towards my rating, but you know that Halloween was a big influence on this movie, because they had to pay a lot of money
Definitely.
to have that score in that movie in the end of this movie. and they could have really done that as far as horror rules go with almost any bigger horror movie, but they specifically picked that one.
Had to be
And
Halloween.
the impact that Halloween had on horror, this movie ended up having the same impact in reviving the slasher genre in the mid-90s, and it's just crazy that the whole final act of this movie has Halloween playing in the background, and then I didn't even know this until you just said it. He wrote the whole script listening to that score to have that foresight that this movie was going to have the same impact on horror in real life. It's just I mean, I'm sure he never imagined that it would have the impact that it did, but it's just wild.
Yeah, definitely. So the script started a massive bidding war between studios where it was then bought by Miramax for $400,000 with a promise to start production right away. Unfortunately, though, Williamson's agent and the studio had him remove a lot of the gore in the script, like internal organs hanging out and severed limbs. So once the ball got moving on pre-production, the search for a director began with Danny Boyle, Tom McLoughlin, Sam Raimi, George A. Romero, Quentin Tarantino, and Robert Rodriguez all being considered, but most of them had no interest because the script came off more as a comedy spoof movie and not a serious horror film. Now, Wes Craven did like the script but didn't want to direct any more gory horror films because of the heat that he took for movies like Last House on the Left and A Nightmare on Elm Street. Plus, he was also putting together and planning to direct The Haunting of Hill House around that same time. But thankfully, the Hill House deal was canceled, and his assistant and producer pushed the Scary Movie script on him again, which caused him to call up Miramax and take the deal as long as he could pick his next project after this film. Once Craven and Williamson met in person to discuss the story, Craven had him add in a little more of the gore and finish writing the end, which was still up in the air at the time. So, the first major actor to join was, of course, Drew Barrymore, who was originally cast as Sidney Prescott. Unfortunately, though, after some time, Barrymore decided that she wanted to leave the project, but opted to take on a smaller role in order to not upset the heads of Miramax. The producers thought that this would be a great idea, considering they could kill her off first, showing the audience that no one would be safe. I personally have always heard that this was Barrymore's idea, but while researching this, I discovered that it wasn't. It was actually the producers from Woods Entertainment. So, yeah, little bit different than I'd always heard.
Yeah, either way, like, I thought it was genius to have the biggest name in your film and, put her on the poster and then murder her first.
Yeah,
Like,
that only happened because she decided while they were trying to, because she had joined the cast before they had found a director. So by the time they found a director, she was ready to move on to something else, but didn't kind of want to sour her relationship with the Weinstein. So she was like, I'll still be in it, but I don't want to be the main character. Yeah.
well, that was a mistake. I don't know what she did, and why the rest of Scream was being filmed, but I can almost guarantee it wasn't as big.
Well, I mean, she's still in the movie and she's probably in the most memorable scene. So
Yeah,
still
yeah.
not a bad choice.
No, I love how it ended up being. I used to think that was on purpose, and I thought it was genius. So I definitely think it worked out.
Yep. So there were a ton of big actors that almost joined the production. I'm not going to go into all that because there is way too much to go over, but I definitely recommend looking it up though, because it's pretty wild to see who turned down one of the biggest films of the 90s. So once they officially got a director on board and everybody was cast, it was time to start production, where after many places were scouted, including Canada, they settled on California. Principal photography began on April 15th of 1996, with the first week being spent filming the Casey Becker scenes. Because the hung Casey was to appear gutted from chest to waist, effects artist Howard Berger decided against applying prosthetics to Barrymore in favor of a mannequin that could be hollowed out, showing her spine holding her upper and lower parts together. The effect was enhanced with various rubbers and vinyl guts. For Steve Orth's death, K&B created an open back chair, allowing the actor to kneel behind a hollowed out animatronical mannequin torso cut open at the abdomen and filled with latex, rubber, and gelatin intestines. Another interesting fact, the Weinstein brothers were initially unhappy about Craven's directing the first few weeks and almost fired him.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Man.
Thankfully, the producers from Woods Entertainment fought back, forcing them to keep Craven, and they also hated the Ghostface mask and wanted the whole intro refilmed with different, more scary masks.
Yeah. Well, that goes to show you what they knew.
Yeah.
I mean, for one, by this point, like Wes Craven was a staple. Like he was already a legend in horror. When you think of The Last House on the Left being his debut, which as big as that movie was, and then being responsible for the whole Nightmare on Elm Street franchise,
The Hills Have Eyes.
the People Under the
People Under-
Stairs.
yep.
Yeah, so he was already a legend. To want to fire him is one thing, but Kevin Williamson, and I don't want to take credit away from him because this is a really awesome story, but whenever when it was in its early phases, and you say like a group of teens that already knew all the horror tropes being attacked by a killer, that sounds like a horror comedy. Like it does.
Yeah.
And then they had a lot of the gore and stuff taken out. I really think that Wes Craven is who made this movie scary, and I say that because Kevin Williamson wrote some other movies following this, like I Know What You Did Last Summer, and when we covered that, like a big fall off on that, and what disappointed us the most was the lack of gore
Yeah, the
and
kills, yeah.
scariness.
Mhm.
Like not only was it the gore, but the killer too. The killer was not very scary. The movie itself isn't very scary. I think Wes Craven really stepped into this and added a lot of the horror that blew this movie up.
Well, from what I understand, Craven was the only director willing to do it that understood that there was a line for the horror and the comedy. That was what a lot of directors couldn't get, was it just when they would read it, it would sound like a comedy. And Wes Craven was like, no, I can make it a horror movie with little bits of comedy in it, which is really what makes this movie shine. So the film's 42-minute end sequence set at Stu's party was filmed at night over 3 weeks, which encountered tons of problems with lighting and cinematography. This caused Craven and the cinematographer to get into many arguments, leading to the cinematographer getting fired and replaced by Peter Deming. Filming concluded on June 14th of 1996, with many of the cast and crew, including Craven, becoming good friends and claiming they had a great time filming the movie, despite some of the issues that caused the production to run behind schedule. So once filming had wrapped up, the film entered post-production where the name was changed to Scream by Harvey Weinstein, citing a Michael Jackson song. And needless to say, the cast and crew were not very excited about the new title, but none of that really mattered once the test screen audiences went wild for the movie, prompting Miramax to immediately ask Craven to direct 2 more sequels. Despite the film having to be sent to the MPAA 9 different times, it did eventually receive an R rating, where it was then set to release on December of that year, which was actually done to give teenagers a reason to go to the theaters other than Christmas movies. That was the whole reason it was released in December. Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
That's crazy to me how many times they had to go to the fucking MPAA.
Yeah. So marketing for Scream positioned Barrymore as the lead character to initially shock the audience with her death. During a promotional interview, Ulrich accidentally revealed that he portrayed one of the killers and called his agent to get the story blocked. So during its opening weekend, the film grossed $6.4 million, making it the 4th highest grossing film of the weekend, which caused it to be considered a failure by industry professionals, resulting in Variety magazine labeling Scream, quote, dead on arrival.
Yeah.
Wow.
They
That's,
really nailed that.
yeah. However, Scream received positive audience word of mouth and exit polling, which contributed to its performance improving in the following weeks, where it eventually became the highest grossing slasher film of its time until Halloween 2018.
Yeah. Yeah. Dead on arrival.
Yeah, dead on arrival.
Yeah, it really killed the box office.
Made almost $200 million. In the decades following its release, Scream has remained an extremely popular horror film where it even launched a successful film franchise that is still running strong today. It is credited with revitalizing the horror genre and is described as a groundbreaking slasher film that successfully crossed over into the mainstream because of its blend of traditional horror with self-aware commentary and satire. After Scream's success, studios rushed to capitalize on its popularity with teen-centric horror films and television series leading into the 2000s, such as I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, The Faculty, Final Destination, and Cherry Falls. By the
The
way, the other movie that
the
he wrote is The
Faculty.
Faculty. It just clicked.
Yeah, that's one that we covered that he wrote. Not a lot of gore in that one either, but I love The Faculty.
Good movie.
Yeah, that was a little different. He's done a lot of slashers. I never really put it together, but he did. He helped write H2O, Halloween. So to go from idolizing Halloween as much as he did to go on to actually be a part writer on
Contribute, yeah,
H2O is you know how excited he was to probably work on that.
definitely. So it is now regarded as a classic of the horror genre and one of the greatest slasher films ever made. Since then, it has spawned many sequels, including Scream 2 from 1997, Scream 3 from 2000, Scream 4 in 2011, Scream 5 in 2022, Scream 6 in 2023, and finally Scream 7, which is due next year, as well as a TV series which ran for 3 seasons on MTV.
Man, whatever happened to the TV series? Because I know I watched I remember the first season being all right, and then
So
I remember being super bummed by them not having the same mask. But I think you told me that they brought the Ghostface back.
So the first 2 seasons are pretty decent. It's the same story, same characters. They could not use the Scream mask because the Weinstein fuckface brothers would not allow them to. And even though they were getting a cut of the show, and finally they let them do it for season 3. But in order to do that, they had to change the story, so they brought in a whole new cast of characters, whole new story, and they included the Ghostface mask for season 3, but people just didn't really care much for it, so
Huh.
yeah, first 2 seasons is watchable for sure. Not Ghostface, but still a good slasher show.
Yeah, I remember being pleasantly surprised by the first season. I can't remember if I watched the second one. And then I do remember you telling me that they did bring back Ghostface, but under a different story. Hey, on the bright side, at least we don't have like some Blumhouse Scream
Oh, yeah, definitely.
show to look forward to.
Alright, so ratings. Rotten Tom, a 78%. IMDb, a 7.4 out of 10. Holy shit, dude. Letterbox, a 4 out of 5.
Wow,
The highest letterbox score by far we have ever
it
covered.
broke out of the threes.
Yep. The Google average audience rating is a 4.5 out of 5. If you would like to watch this movie, you can currently find it streaming for free on Pluto TV with subscriptions on Peacock, Paramount, Fubo, however you say that, Roku, Hulu, Sling TV, Amazon, and for rent on Google Play, Apple TV, and Fandango for $3.99. But like us, I'm sure most of you own this film.
Well, there goes our Fobu fucking advertisement.
Is it Fobu?
Way to go. I don't know.
Fubu,
I thought
Fobu?
Fubu was a shoe.
I don't know. It's a weird name. Are you ready to dive into the plot? Are you ready to go to Woodsboro?
I'm dying to go to Woodsboro.
Let's go. So we start out with probably one of the greatest intros in horror film history as we immediately hear a phone ring and get a simple black and white title card followed by a woman screaming. We are then introduced to Casey Becker, a popular 17-year-old girl who is planning on spending the evening watching movies with her boyfriend while her parents are out for a few hours. Now, it is important to note, Casey is currently home alone because her boyfriend Steve hasn't arrived yet, and her very nice house is pretty much out in the middle of nowhere.
All these fucking houses are super nice.
Yeah, very wealthy people in Woodsboro. So while hanging out, she gets a phone call from a man that seems to have dialed the wrong number. Now, at first, Casey blows this off as a simple mistake, but pretty much immediately the man calls right back and uses his charm to keep her on the phone, where they eventually spark up a friendly conversation. While talking to this guy, Casey starts making some popcorn on the stove, which ends up steering the conversation towards movies. And this is where we find out that Casey is kinda into horror films, which is, my kind of lady. And upon this revelation, the man then asks the most iconic question of the whole franchise: what's your favorite scary movie? To which she responds, Halloween, of course. Yep.
Some good foreshadowing.
Yeah. We then, of course, get a pretty funny Nightmare on Elm Street joke where Casey says that the first one was good, but the rest suck. Which, if you don't know, Wes Craven directed the first Nightmare on Elm Street and this movie. But he claims he did not put that in the movie. Like, somebody else came up with that line.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Which, by the way,
you're the director. Like, you could have totally had control over whether or not that was put in there.
You can slam all of the Nightmare on Elm Streets except for 3.
Yeah.
3's amazing.
Don't touch Dream Warriors.
No.
I wouldn't say slam them all. I
there's
don't think Dream Warriors and 1 are the only 2 good ones. But there's a couple that, yeah, you could slam.
No, they're not the only 2 good ones, but I've heard many people say the first one was good and the rest sucked, and I would disagree. If you're going to I don't think they all suck. I don't like Freddy's Dead, but the rest of them are good. I love them.
I think a lot of people share your opinion in that 3 is their favorite.
I love 3. Love it.
I'm a diehard supporter of 1. I will always love the dark before we got as much charisma and comedy. But 3 is a great movie.
So things are getting a little spicy between this guy and Casey, where the guy finally asks her name. And she plays a little hard to get, kind of laughing it off and asking why he wants her name. And he then says, because I want to know who I'm looking at, which immediately puts Casey on guard. Realizing the mood has shifted, the guy then tries to play it off like he said something else, but Casey isn't buying it as we then see her pacing around the house, checking the locks before she attempts to end the call. But only seconds later, a now scared and frustrated Casey hears the phone ring again, which she promptly answers, and needless to say, the nice guy act is over as we now hear a much more domineering and angry voice on the phone. Casey pretty quickly hangs up again, but immediately gets another call when she suddenly answers the phone with, "Listen, asshole," but is immediately cut off by the man on the phone as he says, "Listen here, you little bitch, you hang up on me again and I will gut you like a fish," which is, of course, another iconic line. Like, when I watched it this week, this kind of reminds me a little bit of the caller from Black Christmas.
Yeah.
Get a little bit of Black Christmas vibe here.
Yeah, when I watched Black Christmas, obviously I'd seen Scream prior, way before I'd seen Black Christmas, and the way he talks very much reminded me of this phone call.
Yeah.
For the time that Black Christmas came out, like the profanity that he uses is very shocking.
Definitely. I will go on record to say I have probably seen Scream more than any other movie that I've ever seen.
I think that phone call is what actually pulled me into Black Christmas. I think I was like, okay, that I was locked in after that. Yeah, I don't know. As far as the most I've ever seen, I don't know, but I've seen Scream probably more times than I could possibly count on both hands.
Yeah, I'm very positive that this is very much a kind of a comfort movie. I've seen this movie so many times. Definitely in my top 3 of favorite movies, and I've seen it a lot. I didn't even have to take notes on this
I can
movie when I wrote it.
imagine what your rating's gonna be.
Yeah, I'm sure. So at this point, Casey realizes that this might be a little more serious than she thought as she then runs through the house, locking every door she can find. She then tells the dude that she is about to call the cops, but this doesn't scare him at all as he quickly responds that they are out in the middle of nowhere and she would be dead by the time they arrived. This rattles Casey to her core where she begins to cry and ask him what he wants, where he then tells her he wants to see what her insides look like, which has always chilled me to the bone. That is
Yeah,
a chilling line to say.
that's a good one.
So after that, Casey begins to panic when suddenly her worst fear becomes a reality as she hears the doorbell ring, which tells her that this dude who definitely wants to kill her is actually here at her house. So she then tries to scare this man off by telling him that her boyfriend should be here any minute and he is big, he plays football, and he will kick his ass. But we quickly find out that the man on the phone isn't intimidated by this at all because, as we are about to see, he has already captured Casey's boyfriend, Steve. He then instructs Casey to turn on the lights in the back and take a look, and when she does, she almost loses it at the sight of her badly beaten boyfriend duct taped to a chair with his mouth gagged. It is at this point where you now know for a fact this isn't a prank, your friends aren't fucking with you, this is some real deal murder shit.
Yep. Yeah, I always wondered, did she know Randy? Because when Sydney gets the phone call, she thinks it's Randy because of how much he's into horror movies and the whole question, like, what's your favorite
Yeah, that's
scary
a good
movie?
point, yeah.
She must not have known Randy too well because she didn't.
Maybe not.
She never like considered that it
No,
was Randy or mentioned it.
definitely not
It
at
was
all.
always just like a weird background thing I've thought of. Like, those two must not have been friends.
Yeah, so when I first watched this for one, I was like a nervous wreck during this scene. Little child me was fucking just on the edge of his seat. And there's a scene coming up here. This was like the first scene I had to like hide my eyes, which has happened very rarely for me in a movie.
This intro, in my opinion, is the best intro in
Oh
all
yeah,
of horror.
definitely.
It literally just it sets the stage so good. Unfortunately, I don't think it can be upped the whole rest of the
No.
movie. Like,
Yeah.
it's such a great fucking intro.
Yeah. I also want to point out something I very recently found out. So we do get a little bit of a hint about the end. Because if you pay close attention to this scene with Steve, like the first time they show Steve, he actually looks to his left and his right. It's a
Uh,
little hint.
yeah,
Yeah.
never noticed that.
So the man on the phone then tells her that if she wants to save Steve and herself, she has to play a little game of horror movie trivia. But if she gets a question wrong, someone has to die. So after reluctantly agreeing, the man decides to give Casey a little warm-up question, which is who is the killer in Halloween? Which according to her is her favorite horror movie. And to no surprise, she gets it correct. But the next question is a little trickier because he proceeds to ask for her to name the killer in Friday the 13th, which a now more confident Casey quickly blurts out Jason. But unfortunately for Steve, that is incorrect. And despite Casey arguing that she has seen that movie 20 goddamn times, she knows it's Jason, the man on the phone corrects her by telling her that Pamela Voorhees was the original killer and Jason didn't pop up until the sequel.
Man, when I was a kid, I was so like, damn, that was a good trick question.
Yeah.
Because whenever I was a kid, as
You
soon
didn't
as
think
I
about that.
heard that, I thought Jason.
Yep.
And now that I'm an adult, I'm like, damn, I would have definitely gotten that answer right.
Yep.
But when you're younger and you hear that for the first time, like, Especially with the first question being like Michael Myers being the face of that franchise, and then you think of Jason being the face of Friday the 13th. It is a really good trick question to ask somebody.
Yeah, and I will say, I'm sure it adds, there's a level that's added when, somebody's life's on the line. Maybe you're not thinking as clearly and you're kind of, boom, you immediately go with what pops up in your head.
I gotta say, if somebody I love's life was on the line, though, I don't care if somebody asked me what color shirt I had on. I would triple take at it before I answered, just to
Yeah,
be safe.
good point. So, as Casey stands there stunned, realizing that she was wrong, the man then tells her that fortunately for her, there is a bonus round, but poor Steve has run out of time. We then begin to hear the gross sound of a knife cutting through clothes and human flesh as Steve's screams are muffled by the tape. And this is the scene where I literally had to close my eyes and put my hands over my ears when I was a kid. I just couldn't deal with it. Once Casey kind of snaps out of it, she then cuts the back porch lights on where she immediately spots Steve, who is definitely now dead, still taped to the chair with his guts literally hanging out, laying in his lap. Now,
Sucks to be Steve.
yeah, his guts are just on the outside
I
now.
was gonna say he couldn't hold his lunch.
Yeah, so now, despite the fact that Casey is on the verge of a mental breakdown, the man on the phone reminds her that she still has one more question left. And he then asks her, what door is he at? But he doesn't give her much time to answer because he quickly tosses a chair through the sliding glass window, which causes Casey to take off running through the house. And upon arriving in the kitchen to grab a knife, we see Casey's popcorn is way overdone. It has now caught fire, filling the house with smoke, which in turn makes it harder for her to see down the hallway. Now, with the phone still in one hand and a butcher knife in the other, Casey slowly heads for a side exit when she suddenly spots a man in an all-black Halloween costume darting around the house looking for her. Now, once she gets safely outside, she notices her mom and dad's car driving down the long driveway, meaning she's only 5 minutes or so away from help. The only problem is, if she takes off towards this car, the man inside will see her. Once they get a little closer, Casey decides that she will look inside one last time to make sure the coast is clear, then make a run for it. But as she pops her head up, the man quickly spins around, revealing his white and black ghost face mask, breaks the glass, and attacks Casey. This is actually Wes Craven in the mask here. Yeah.
Did not know that.
Yep. Using the weight of the 10-pound cordless phone, she manages to hit Wes Craven in the face and escape. But as she runs back towards the front of the house, he begins to chase her. And right before she makes it to the driveway where her parents are, Ghostface grabs her from behind and stabs her in the chest with his 12-inch long hunting knife. Now, once we get through this scene, I want you to give everybody like a brief history lesson about this particular mask, because a lot of people don't realize this, but this is not the normal Ghostface mask we know and love.
Yeah. This is one of two scenes in the entire movie that is not the typical Fun World mask.
Yes. So once he stabs Casey in the chest, they both fall to the ground where he realizes that she is still alive, where he begins to strangle her. But using some of her last bit of energy, she manages to knee him in the balls, which buys her a little bit of time to try and get her parents' attention, considering they are only about 25 feet away walking into the house. Now, because of the strangling, Casey can't scream for them, and right as they walk onto the porch, they notice the door open and the house filled with smoke, which immediately causes them to run in, totally not realizing that their very injured daughter is right there trying to get their attention. That is like one of the devastating parts of this intro.
Dude, that's what makes this intro so amazing.
Yeah.
Is like the way that he stalks her and lets her get so close to her parents, and they're right there. They're like 10 or 15 feet away, and she can't vocalize loud enough because she's been stabbed, and he's just, like, in the foreground stalking her, behind her, and then, the whole, like, her mom being able to hear her on the phone. It's just fucking, like, brutal. Like,
Definitely.
it is super brutal. I imagine that if they had to go to the ratings board, like, 9 different times making cuts, that they probably did a lot of cuts from other parts of the movie so they could keep as much of this intact as possible, because this is by far my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah, definitely. Once they head inside, Casey collapses on the porch where Ghostface climbs on top of her, preparing to deliver the final wound. And as he does this, Casey reaches her hand up, pulling off the mask in order to see who this is, which we obviously don't get to see. But if you've seen this film before, you will know that she is very familiar with this person.
Yeah, it's a good hint too. It's kinda like in her face, you can see that she's kinda familiar with who it is. So you kinda know as a viewer that this is probably gonna be a character that we know
Definitely.
throughout the movie.
And there is a really cool kind of theory that a lot of people have put a lot of time into that I'm going to tell you about in the Patreon that's going to kind of cover the whole movie. But one of the things is this part right here, and it's very interesting. So once inside, the parents start freaking out, wondering just what the hell happened and where the fuck their daughter is. But right as Casey's mom picks up the phone to call 911, she realizes that she can hear her daughter struggling to breathe, which I could only imagine is every parent's worst nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah, just the sounds on that is just horrifying, man.
Definitely. We then cut to a very wounded and bloody Casey who is still holding on to the phone, being dragged across the yard as her mother begins freaking out. And it is at this point where the dad realizes that this is a very serious situation, and he tells his wife to get in the car and drive down to the Mackenzies for help, which is a bit of a nod to John Carpenter's Halloween. I think we might have mentioned that in our Halloween episode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so.
After resisting for a moment, the mom finally agrees, but as she heads out the front door, she is instantly stopped in her tracks at the sight of her brutally murdered daughter hanging from a rope in the front yard with her guts hanging out, which is a very iconic shot.
It's super iconic, man, and Ghostface totally does a Jason Voorhees here with the speed at which he got her body up there.
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
you think as many times as like Jason's rigged up bodies, man, he would be a little impressed.
I mean, he's big as fuck too. Like Ghostface not jacked, at least as far
Yeah.
as we can tell. But man, what a fucking perfect intro into a movie. Like, I don't think there's any way that this could have been done any better.
No, like I said, I absolutely love it. This kill is my favorite part of the movie. To me, this movie is a love letter to the slasher genre. Like this whole movie,
Definitely.
the whole meta idea of horror movies and slashers existing within this world and there being rules to it. It is very much a love letter to slashers in general, and a lot of slashers, and my favorite slashers, a lot of times start out with a really cool kill. Like, we get a cool kill intro. That's something that in a lot of horror movies you don't get because you start out in the beginning of a story, but slashers are one of those movies where you have a killer. You can literally open the movie up with some random nobody who sometimes doesn't have anything to do with the story being murdered before you jump into the story. And it's just fitting that a movie that is a love letter to slashers having such a great intro.
Yeah, when you were just talking, I kind of had a light bulb moment where we know that these killers, this Ghostface killer, is obsessed with horror movies. What if he hangs Casey from the tree as like an ode to Jason?
It might have been.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It works. I'm officially saying that's what it was. That's my opinion.
It might have been. Man, if I recall, I think Michael Myers may do that a handful of times too,
Jason does it
throughout the
better.
franchise. Yeah, Jason is great for setting traps.
100%.
Like he sets up these tripwires that we never see in the movies, but like somebody's walking by and a body falls out of the closet,
They work so well
out of
every
a
time.
tree. Yeah.
Flies through a window, whatever.
Makes you wonder for Jason, like how many that don't work.
That don't go off.
Like that they, like, step over the tripwire or something.
Or they don't go that way.
Yeah, we just never see him, and Jason's just, like, behind a tree like, "Damn it."
God, dude, when the police go out there, they're like, all right, make sure you remember to look up because there's bodies we haven't found.
You know this Jason guy, last time Tommy over there shit his pants when some teenage girl fell out of the tree on him.
So you want to go ahead and give the listeners a quick little rundown about the K&B mask.
Yeah, so the mask as we know it is a Fun World mask. Wes Craven wanted to use something that was a mask that you could pick up at a convenience store, like a general Halloween mask. However, they wanted to make it. And I think it was Marianne Madalena, which is one of the producers, had initially spotted the Fun World peanut. I think it was Peanut Eyes, the Fun World mask, and she took it to them, and they, I guess, hated it at first. And you can look up pictures of it, but there's a shit ton of drawings out there of the different designs that they had. But like 2 weeks later, they went back to this mask and decided that they were going to use this, but they were so close to shooting at the time, it took some time for them to work out deals with Fun World to essentially be able to use the mask in the movie. Like they had to strike a deal. So K&B Effects, who did a lot of the effects for this movie, which for those that don't know, that's Greg Nicotero, his effects company, they put together, I guess. So I always thought that they didn't initially strike a deal up, so they made this mask, but it had to be slightly off. But apparently, from what I looked up, that this was done in the process of them striking a deal. So this was just like their closest attempt at a ghost face mask, which doesn't surprise me because K&B is responsible for the worst Michael Myers mask that ever existed. They also gave us that great Jason Universe mask.
Yeah, they're not great at masks.
Yeah, they're really good at effects, not very good at masks, from what we can tell. But yeah, and then so they did some reshoots, I guess, whenever they finally got the deal struck. I think you had told me they couldn't reshoot the intro scenes.
Yeah, Drew Barrymore had went off to do her next project because she originally wanted to leave, and there was no way to get her back to shoot the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
And they were kind of consistently behind schedule. So, yeah, they just didn't have time to go back, and the mask was close enough. Which you can identify the mask because it has kind of really wide eyes, like the top part of the mask where the eyes are is really wide, and then it goes down to a very skinny mouth.
Yeah.
And that is kind of every time you see that, you know that that is the K&B mask.
Yeah, if you're not super familiar with the mask, when you see it, if you feel like something's a little off about that mask, if you are familiar with this mask, it's very easy to tell. There's actually a company who I think is Brookbench Designs, who is an independent company, sold a K&B version of this mask, which I didn't know about. And I was like, that would be really cool to get your hands on, but apparently Fun World shut that down. Although Fun World has used copies of his masks and currently sells this year. There's like a mask that we seen in Spirit Halloween that looks almost like a ghost face mask, but looks like a knockoff. So that's a Fun World mask, but that was originally his mask design. But of course, Fun World's got a shit ton of money, and this guy is an independent studio, and he doesn't. In researching the mask, I did find out. So growing up, I always thought Fun World, created this mask and was responsible for it. But I do want to put the name Lorne Githens out there. So he worked for a production company. The company was responsible for like those caveman Geico commercials, and they've done a lot of different stuff like that. But he was a mask maker. Him and a couple friends started a company called the Algerian Ghost Factory. And he went to one of those conventions. I don't know what it was called back then, but it was essentially like a Halloween trade show.
Yeah.
People try to sell off their masks to their ideas to different like bigger companies, and they had like the haunted house stuff and all types of just Halloween related shit. And he initially created this line of masks, and it was 5, but his idea was a kit, essentially. You got the mask, and it was a kit to turn your old sheets into like a ghost costume. It was like a kind of the old like sheet over the head ghost, but you actually got the mask with it. And at this trade show that he took this to, he believed in the idea so much, he took it to the trade show in Chicago. Well, a representative from Fun World was at that same trade show, and the very next year, Fun World came out with these masks.
They stole the design.
Now, to this day, Fun World denies that these masks were actually stolen. We'll try to get a picture posted if anybody asks about it, if they want to see it. But I'm going to show you a picture of it real quick, because it is very obvious that it's not just the ghost face, it's all 4 of the original Fantastic faces.
Yeah, they definitely 100% stole it. I mean, the eyes, the mouth, everything.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's all 4 of them. And so with Ghostface Fun World's version of the mask is like the peanut ghost, but that is one of the 4 Fantastic face lines. So the other 3 are also like dead matches to ones he did. So shout out to Lorne Githens, who still to this day, and he has come out and talked about this before. He doesn't want any money for it. He just wants credit for something he designed and put a lot of time into. But Fun World essentially threatened to sue the fuck out of him too. So
Of course.
yeah.
Yep, that's business for you. So, later that night, after the murder of Casey and Steve, we jump on over to another 17-year-old high school student and our main character, Sydney Prescott, who we see working on the computer in her bedroom. Which I just want to point out, if you had a fucking computer in your room in 1996, you were rich as fuck.
Well, if you lived in this house, your family was at least rich.
Yeah.
All of these houses are fucking. I didn't realize until years later, like watching videos of people doing like walkthroughs or pictures from when they sold. These houses are fucking amazing.
Yeah, they're like $6 million homes. All right, so let's go over some context real quick. So Sydney is kind of the good girl in her friend group. She doesn't do drugs, she doesn't really drink, and as we'll soon find out, she still hasn't had sex with her boyfriend Billy, even though they've been dating for over 2 years now. Also, Sydney's mom was raped and murdered in this very house a year ago, where Sydney identified the killer as a man named Cotton Weary. During the investigation, it was discovered that Cotton Weary and Sid's mom, Maureen, had been carrying on a secret affair for some time. So when Sydney identified him, it made perfect sense to the cops, who then arrested him, took him to trial, and just recently sent him to prison for life. So that is where we are now in this story. So Sydney then hears some rustling around outside her window when she then gets jump scared by her boyfriend as he climbs up to surprise her. Which, like I said like a few weeks back, this has to be an ode to Nightmare on Elm Street. It is extremely similar to Glenn and Nancy. And of course, they're both directed by Wes Craven. So when this happens, Sydney forces Billy to hide as her dad comes to the door checking to make sure she's okay, where he then informs her of what time he is leaving in the morning and what hotel he will be staying at while on his trip for work. Which it took me so fucking long to realize why this scene was so important to the end of the film. So after that, Sydney then asks Billy what he is doing here, and this is where we find out that Sydney and Billy were a lot more sexual in their relationship until last year when her mom died, which in turn caused her to not be interested in any kind of physical contact from Billy. And well, Billy is suffering from some serious blue balls as he tries to talk her into at least some kissing and a little bit of finger banging. Sydney then loosens up and does agree to a makeout session, but quickly shuts it down when Billy almost breaks what he calls her underwear rule. As soon as his hand just starts inching closer and closer towards that underwear, she's like, nope.
Damn. Yeah, when she's got an underwear rule, like that's pretty rough.
Yeah. So after this, Billy then goes to head back home when Sid then offers him a little PG-13 action as she quickly flashes her boobs at him right as he goes to climb back down the side of the house.
I think this is kind of fucked up. I think this is making things a little worse.
More blue balls?
Yeah, if you're going to have an underwear rule, let's not flash the titties.
Apparently it's their first time.
Like, if you're trying to take it slow and not do that, like, that's fine. That's your personal choice. But if you're with your significant other having friction over disagreements, you probably shouldn't turn him on even more.
Yeah, it's like, after over 2 years of being together, I'm finally gonna let you see my nipples.
It's like
Damn.
it's literally like somebody like starving and begging for food, and you going and showing them
Showing your
like a
sandwich.
nice juicy steak you're about to eat.
Oh, so the next morning we arrive at Woodsboro High School where we see tons of cops and reporters due to the gruesome murders of Casey and Steve the night before. And you also got to remember, just a year before this, Maureen Prescott was murdered here, which ended up becoming this huge national story thanks to a famous reporter named Gail Weathers. So Sydney then arrives, totally confused about what all the police and media are hanging out in front of the school for, when she suddenly runs into her best friend Tatum Riley, who fills her in on what happened last night. So later on that day, we see Sydney meeting up with her group of friends at the school fountain where they talk about the recent murders. And this is where we meet most of our core characters. So we have already met Sydney, Billy, and Tatum, but next we have Tatum's boyfriend and Billy's best friend, Stu Mocker, who is your typical class clown funny guy, and Randy Meeks, who is also a funny guy, but more importantly, a huge horror film nerd. We also have two other main characters that we have briefly met, which is Deputy Dewey Riley, who is Tatum's older brother, and Gail Weathers, the big city investigative journalist who wrote the book on Maureen's murder and has consistently pushed the theory that Cotton Weary is innocent and Sydney identified the wrong man. So obviously, Sydney and Gail do not have a friendly relationship. Sydney hates Gail just a tad bit more than my co-host here.
Yeah. Man, I don't know, man. Maybe we're on the same level.
Yeah, wow, you hate her that much.
Yeah, I can't stand her.
Wow.
Now I didn't hate her as much in the early movies.
When did the hate begin?
I don't know. I think it was probably around part 4.
Oh, wow, part 4?
Maybe part 3. I don't know. Maybe as I just kept watching them, it just grew. She is an awful person in the first one. Like, as I got older, I realized how awful of a person she is. Like, she makes the comment in a little bit to Dewey, like, they're talking about serial killers and some more people would have to die for it to be considered a serial killer. And she's like, oh, one could only hope. Like, so there's like stories that she could write from it or, more media coverage. yeah, she is a fucking awful person
Definitely.
to make like a good person character in the franchise.
I really like her, but I know she's an awful I don't like her because I like her because she's entertaining to the movie, not because she's like a good character, a good person. But I will 100% say if they were gonna kill off any of the core cast, it could have been her first.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think that's another reason I hate her is because they've almost killed her off in multiple movies and she survives. And it's like, so she's a core character. It's a big deal if she dies.
yeah.
And I think that's like shows a lot of guts. Like nobody's safe when a core character dies. And they did eventually do that with Dewey.
I'm still so fucking pissed off
How
about that.
many yeah, not only did they kill him off, but they fucking, like, shit on his character, like, made him from part 4 where he's the sheriff or, like, the
Mhm.
chief, and then to part 5 is a completely different Dewey. But anyway, yeah, if they were gonna kill somebody off, it should have been her. She's almost died in, like, 3 of the movies, and she miraculously survives at the end, and yeah, I just all those things combined, I just don't like her.
It fuels your hate for Gale. So during this scene, we see the teens discussing the murders where it appears that they all have a different outlook on it, with Stu and Randy not really taking it too seriously, Tatum kind of standing in the gray area, and Billy and Sydney seeming to realize this could be serious. We also see here some of the teens jokingly accusing each other of the killings, where we find out that Randy was working at the video store all night and Stu was hanging out with Tatum. And speaking of Stu, Sydney calls him out for dating Casey for a bit before she eventually broke up with him for Steve, where he then ended up with Tatum. So definitely a little bit of a motive there. So later that day, after school, we see Sydney arrive home to her $6 million house overlooking a fucking vineyard or some shit, where she then calls Tatum about staying the night at her place. To which Tatum agrees and tells her that she will be by a little later to pick her up. And once Sydney grabs her stuff for the night, she decides to take a nap on the couch until her friend arrives. We then jump a couple of hours later where Sydney gets a call from Tatum informing her that she stopped by the video store and is running late, but after Sid hangs up, the phone immediately rings again. Sydney assumes that this is Tatum calling back, but is quickly surprised when she hears an unrecognizable voice on the other end, which is, of course, Ghostface, who we heard calling Casey the night before. But this time, he doesn't play the nice guy calling the wrong number bit. He immediately calls her by her name and starts taunting her about the murders, saying it is just like a horror movie. And this causes her to play along for a moment, thinking that it's Randy playing a joke on her. He then asks her favorite scary movie, and this is where we find out that she doesn't like horror films, believing them to be way too unrealistic and focusing too much on women with attractive looks but no brains. He then tells her that he isn't Randy, which prompts her to ask who he is, and he responds, "The question isn't who am I, but where am I?" Which chills Sydney and us to the bone. He then claims that he is on her front porch, but she quickly calls his bluff, immediately walking outside to check, totally leaving the fucking door open.
Yeah, this is one of those moments in the horror movies where you're like, "What are you doing? Like, that's so fucking stupid. Who would do that?"
Yep.
Yeah, this is that.
After
Like,
she
they
just talked
there's
shit about people in horror movies doing dumb shit.
well, there's also somebody was just brutally murdered.
Yep.
Not to mention her own mother, almost a year ago to the day, was
Yep.
brutally murdered. Like, you should probably take this shit a little serious.
Brutally murdered in the house she's standing in. So she then goes back to thinking that this is some kind of prank where she goes to end the call when suddenly he says, "If you hang up on me, you will die just like your mother," which stuns Sydney and completely changes the tone of this call. She then runs inside, locking the door, and as she peers out of the window, Ghostface comes flying out of the closet behind her, bombarding her with a knife attack. While attempting to get away, they both end up on the floor where Sydney manages to fight him off before kicking him in the stomach sending him flying backwards. This allows her to jump up and go for the front door, but remember, she locked it, so she is now forced to run upstairs and call for help, which is, of course, ironic considering she just criticized women in horror for doing the same thing.
Yeah, I always thought that was hilarious. This also starts the Ghostface getting his ass kicked trend
Yeah.
that follows through all of the movies.
All of them, yeah.
Which, if you've ever tried to do anything in a Ghostface mask, is very, very, very likely. But I didn't think about it until I think like the last time I watched this movie. Sydney was never meant to die in this scene. Like, they were never going to kill her in this scene. It would have fucked up the entire plan.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
So you think, like, wonder how long when he lifted that knife up was he waiting for that kick?
Yeah, good point, because he slams her head on the ground and kind of knocks her out for a second. He could have killed her right there,
Yeah.
but he doesn't.
And he also does, like, he lifts the knife in the air and totally, like, holds it there. And if you're trying to kill somebody, it would have been a very immediate thing. But yeah, their plan was never to kill Sydney. It would have spoiled everything.
If he accidentally killed her when he slammed her head on the ground,
Mhm.
he's like, oh, fuck. I think
Yeah.
I messed the plan up.
Bill-
So once she makes it to her bedroom, she is able to slam her door and barricade it with her closet door before Ghostface can catch her. She then quickly runs over to her computer, dialing 911 as he attempts to get in, but about 30 seconds later, he suddenly gives up and takes off running. How she was able to call somebody on the computer in 1996, I will never know. I don't remember that being a thing, but it's possible.
Yeah, well, I mean, they wrote it in the movie back then, so I
Maybe,
guess it was a thing.
Yep.
I thought that was new, and I found out you could text 911, but apparently you could do it on a computer back in the day.
I love how in Scary Movie they replicate this scene and she just texts white woman in trouble and the police are immediately there.
Yeah. Yeah, this is also gotta think, like, this family is very wealthy.
Yeah.
Like, they have some like, I wonder if her dad got, like, a ton of life insurance money or something when their mom died.
I don't
Uh,
know.
But, yeah, they have, like, the top of the line computer and shit.
Yeah. The police are like, we got an alert from a rich neighborhood. Move now. So before she can even realize the attack is over, Billy suddenly pops up in the window, crawling inside, claiming he heard her screaming. She then runs into the open arms of her loving boyfriend when suddenly, as they hug, a fucking cell phone drops out of his pocket, landing on the floor, causing her to instantly suspect him as the killer. It is so wild that owning a cell phone at this time could immediately make you a murder suspect. Nowadays, it would make you suspicious if you didn't have a cell phone.
Yeah, yep, that's how fucking super rare it was to have a cell phone back then.
Well,
I find it crazy that she was so convinced by that cell phone that it was Billy. This is how rare having a cell phone must be. She was so convinced that she ran back through the door where somebody was just trying to murder her.
yeah, she was 100%
yeah.
like he's the killer. Another thing about this is if you are 17 in the mid 90s with a fucking cell phone and your girlfriend has no clue that you have it, there's definitely something going on. I remember when I got my first phone, talking to my girlfriend was the number one thing I did with it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's fucking wild.
You remember back in the day eating up those fucking those
Minutes.
Virgin Mobile minutes,
Yep.
man. Prepaid card.
Mm-hmm. So after Sydney sees the phone, she instantly takes off downstairs to escape the house, but right as she opens the front door, she is frightened by the sight of the ghost face mask being held up by Dewey, who also gets frightened thanks to Sydney's scream. God, I love Dewey, man. I fucking miss him.
Yeah, Dewey was a great character. I think it's just Mr. Arquette in real life is
It's totally him.
he's just awesome.
Because
Like,
if you read the script to Scream, Dewey was like this buff, like cop. Like he was a cop. He was not goofy in any way, shape, or form. And David Arquette, he auditioned to play Billy. And I think they wanted him to come in and read again for Billy, but he was like, you know what? I would rather play the cop. And I guess when they gave him that role, he was like, can I make him a little goofy? And Wes Craven was like, sure. And dude, it literally it made one of the most beloved characters.
Yeah. Anybody who's like watched anything on David Arquette in real life, like the dude is a character in his like that is him.
Yeah, 100%. Also, fucking out of all the cast, shit, out of all of the people just that's been in horror movies, he is probably one of the most thankful for being in this huge horror movie, and he's thankful for, like, fans. Like,
He's super down to earth.
yeah,
He's like somebody who could like come in your house and hang out and it just be completely normal. Like I
definitely.
would imagine meeting him at a convention would be a lot different than other people.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So basically, what happened here is the cops arrived at the house where they found the discarded Ghostface costume on the porch, assumed Billy was the killer, and quickly took it off when Sidney called the cops and pretended like he just kind of happened to show up right after the attack, which causes the cops to immediately place him under arrest. We then see Tatum arrive right before Sydney is carted away in an ambulance, totally stunned that her friend was attacked by the killer. And right as they pull off, we see Gail motherfucking Weathers pull up in her news van, shocked that the daughter of Maureen Prescott was almost murdered in the same house that she was just under a year later. So, I just want to mention the suit that Gail is wearing is so fucking 90s, and she 100% looks like a highlighter.
It's
That famous green yellow suit.
awful suit and person.
All
Let's
you
start
had
with that.
all you had to do is see the suit. Like, you see that suit on a mannequin, you know where that suit's from. It's from
Yeah.
Scream. Yeah. So we then jump to the police station where we find out that no one can find Sydney's dad, and it appears that he never checked into his hotel. Also, the sheriff plans on holding Billy until the phone records prove that he didn't make the calls to Sydney or Casey. By the way, nice boob hat on Dewey's desk. Why the hell does his desk, like his desk is the only one with a bunch of toys on it?
'Cause it's Dewey.
So-
Like, I wouldn't be surprised if David Arquette didn't bring those to set.
He's like, I'm gonna bring my personal boob hat to the set.
if he asked Wes Craven, like, "Can I make the character a little goofy?" You know he brought that shit in there. Like, he brought
That's
that
true.
to set one day and was, like, decorated his desk for these scenes.
Yeah. We have finally made it to the part where we can tell you how we tied this into Halloween season. So there is a quick little scene where Dewey walks over to the sheriff holding a brand new, still in the package Ghostface costume, where he then tells his boss that tracking who bought the costume is basically impossible because they currently have seen this particular costume at every five and dime store in the state. And the only time you ever see costumes in that many stores is right before motherfucking Halloween, officially making this a Halloween movie.
I love how Fun World packages the ghost face masks like this now, like with the whole costume.
Yeah, the
Like
same.
still to this day, they're still packaged like this, or very, very similar to this.
Mm-hmm.
This is the only mask out of all the franchises that you can literally go buy from the company that made the original. And I mean, you can find these at Walmart for like $10
$10. Yeah.
And you look at like the Trick or Treat Studios that has the license for the Michael Myers mask.
$70.
Yeah, they go up every year. I
Mhm.
think this year it went up. I remember I called you over there. I think it was $80 for a
Yeah.
brand new one. $80 fucking dollars. You can go get a ghost face mask for $10 from the exact same smaller company that makes them to this day. They even brought back the vanilla smell like
Mhm.
last year. I own too many. I'm not even
I
I'm
have a lot.
ashamed to say how many ghost face masks that I have because I had to buy a handful of them when they brought it back in the vanilla smell just because it was such a part of my childhood. Like, do you remember when Scream blew up going into Walmart and going into the mask section and the whole entire aisle smelling like that Fun World vanilla smell because they would have so many Fantastic Faces masks?
Yeah, it was awesome. We actually have a picture, if anybody wants to see it, where we competed in like a Scream contest a long time ago. And they wanted to see like all of your Scream shit like together. And I was making the Scream 6 masks at the time. Like no one had officially put that out. And I was making them. So I had like a ton of Scream masks. You had your whole collection. And we literally have a picture of all of it all together. And it's like,
Yeah, when we put all our
whoa.
masks
Yeah.
together, it was hard to even get them in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
I got the frame poster as soon as you come in the front door. We had that. I had the script. You had the Buck 120. It awesome amount of Ghostface shit.
Yeah, I had
And now,
the Scream 6 mask before the movie came out. Like,
yeah.
I had already made it. I had made it using the trailer.
And now you got to think like how many masks we've gotten since then. I don't know if they had the 25th anniversary masks out yet
Yeah,
then
they
when we
they
took
did.
that, but
Mhm.
I know I have another one, if not two more now. We got the Stab poster, the original Stab.
Mhm.
Got all types of shit we could add to it now, but yeah, man, just this mask is iconic, and it is the only mask that you can literally go in and buy for $10, and I love that.
Well, actually, like, if you've ever seen pictures of the studio we record in, there is probably more Scream stuff than anything else. There's a whole entire shelf of just Scream.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then another really cool thing is I had one of my favorite masks as a kid was this, like, lime green, like, it was the same texture as the ghost face mask, and it had, like, one tooth, and it was, like, the smiling ghost.
Mhm, that's
And it
fantastic.
had the same vanilla smell, and I remember running around as a kid playing, like, an imaginary, serial killer going around. I was like the killer, that was like my Scream mask, and I had some goofy name I probably gave myself, and whenever I became an adult and I was looking into the history of Scream masks, I found out that that was an original Fantastic Faces that was in one of the 4 masks that they released in the line with the Scream masks. And I had no idea growing up, like, that those masks were related at all. And those same masks go for a fuck ton of money just because of their relation to Scream. If you could find a Gen 1, like, Ghostface mask in good shape, you're talking about, like, thousands of dollars.
Yeah. So, meanwhile, outside, we see that the station's parking lot is filled with news vans and reporters hoping to catch a glimpse or get a statement from Sydney. Gail realizes that it would be dumb to send Sid out the front door with all this press, so she heads around back hoping to catch her leaving, which is exactly what happens as we then see Gail ambush Sydney with the camera in her face, attempting to ask her about the attack. But Sid doesn't want to talk about that as she angrily asks Gail about Gail's book, when Gail then tells her it's about to come out and she will send her a copy free of charge, prompting Sydney to punch her right in the face. The reason this happens is because Gail wrote a true crime book on Maureen's murder, which of course talks a lot about the affair, how Cotton Weary is innocent, and how Sydney caused him to get convicted. We then jump to Tatum's house where we see her and Sydney hanging out when suddenly Miss Riley informs Sid that she has a phone call. She immediately assumes that this is her dad finally getting a hold of her, but as she picks up the receiver, she hears the familiar voice of Ghostface, who informs her that she caused another innocent man to be arrested, obviously referring to Billy not being the killer. Ghostface definitely picks an odd way to say this, though, because he says, "It looks like you fingered the wrong man again." And I'm like, God, I hope Sydney isn't going around fingering guys' assholes, especially if it's the wrong guys.
Maybe it's Billy.
Also, Dewey runs out of the room, flagging the whole family with that gun. Almost shoots everybody.
Yeah, he didn't make it through that part of
Training.
police training. He
Yep.
was out sick.
So the next day, we see Dewey give Tatum and Sydney a ride to school, which I personally think if you were almost murdered the night before, you can go ahead and take the day off from school.
Yeah.
You know, both Nancy and Sydney both do this.
Well, I guess if you are almost murdered, it's probably a good idea to get a ride from your cop brother.
True.
Unlike Nancy.
We also get a quick cameo of Linda Blair. Yeah, she's a fucking reporter who I don't remember what she says to Sydney when she runs up. Oh, she says fucking, what was it like to almost get murdered? The public has a right to know. And
Yeah.
I'm like, do they?
No, I don't think I don't think that's how it works.
No. That's
The
no.
public has a right to know how you feel about almost being murdered.
The cops force you to tell the public. You tell them what it was
That's
like.
just like when you're going through journalism school. Like that's your go-to. Like, doesn't matter what it is. You tell them the public has a right to know.
So that's funny. So a couple of really important things happen at school. One, a lot of these teenagers aren't taking these murders seriously, as we see a bunch of dumbasses running around in the hallways wearing ghost face costumes, attempting to joke around and scare people.
Which at this time would have been a real thing. This
Yeah.
is how kids in school would have reacted to this.
Definitely.
I don't know about now, but
2, Sydney runs into Billy, who informs her that the cops got his phone records and cleared him, but doesn't understand why she still feels uncomfortable around him. He also compares his mom abandoning him to Maureen's rape and murder, telling her it's been a year and she should get over that already.
yeah, this is
Okay.
fucking. This is insane to me. Like
yeah.
he literally uses the word "you should get over that." Like
It's
her
been a
mom
year.
being brutally murdered, and compares it to his mom and dad getting a divorce.
Yeah. It's basically
Like
the same.
you need to get over it and let me fuck you. Like, this is ridiculous. My mom and dad got a divorce, and I didn't want to fuck you any less.
Yeah. 3, Gail and Dewey finally meet, where Gail attempts to butter him up for information, leading to a bit of flirting from both of them. She says, "You don't look a day over 12." And I was like, what?
Yeah, that's not
Um,
something you want to hear.
Yeah, no. And 4, Sydney gets attacked in the bathroom by Ghostface, where she pretty quickly escapes and gets help, prompting Principal Hembry to cancel school for the rest of the week, which in turn causes a very excited Stu to announce that he is throwing a big-ass party at his place to celebrate. My question for you is, do you think that was the real Ghostface in the bathroom or just another dumbass kid?
I think it was probably another dumbass kid.
I
I've
agree.
always thought of it as the real Ghostface until you asked that question. And thinking about who the actual Ghostface are and knowing that they have no plans on killing Sydney at this point, I think it was just a kid.
Yeah, I believe it was just a kid because I rewound it a couple times. He doesn't have a knife, and he grunts a lot for some reason, which Ghostface doesn't do.
Ghostface always has a buck 120. So if you don't have a buck 120, I mean, what are you doing? You're just a kid with the mask.
Yeah. We also get a really quick scene of Principal Hembry expelling 2 of the teen boys running around in Ghostface costumes, where we see the K&B mask for the last time as he gets pissed and cuts it in half. Interesting that mask that was cut in half just sold an auction the beginning of this year, I think.
I think that was the beginning of last year.
Oh, was it that long? I
Yeah,
didn't think it was that long
it's
ago.
been a while. But yeah, it for a mask that is cut in half, it sold for a lot of money.
Definitely.
Which is considering like it's not only a hero mask, but it's a very rare used hero mask. Not surprising.
We then skip to about an hour or so later after most of the students and staff have left, where we then see Hembry in his office by himself when he suddenly gets a knock at the door. But when he opens it, there is nobody there, putting him on alert. We then get our Wes Craven cameo as we see him dressed as Freddy Krueger mopping the floor. And just in case it was unclear, Hembry even calls him Fred. So apparently, Wes didn't really want to do this scene, but after a week of the cast and crew begging him, he gave in and decided to have a little fun with his most famous character. So, after repeated knocks on the door, Hembry gets a little paranoid and begins checking all around his office and front desk for anybody that may be hiding in a Ghostface costume. But he quickly realizes that it's just somebody playing a joke on him and no killers are waiting to pop out on him. He then breathes a sigh of relief and goes to sit back down behind his desk. But right as he pushes the door closed, the real Ghostface comes running towards him, stabbing him multiple times until he falls to the floor and dies. This kill wasn't in the original script. It had to be added last minute because there was such a long stretch of time between the Casey and Steve kill to the kills at the party. Plus, it helped explain why Stu's house clears out so fast later on.
Maybe he was mad at the principal for getting his mask. He's like, that's where my first mask went.
Maybe.
I killed Casey in that mask. How the fuck did you get it? And then cut it in half.
Maybe. So we then cut to Tatum's house where her and Sydney are talking on the porch. And this is where we find out that, according to Tatum, there were many rumors around town about Marines sleeping with other guys, not just Cotton. At first, Sydney tries to defend her mother's reputation, but it kind of falls apart fast once Tatum, in a nice best friend kind of way, basically tells Sid that her mom was a bit of a woman of ill repute, a Jezebel, a floozy, a lady of easy virtue, if you will. She was basically like, your mom really likes some strange dick.
She was a slut for sure.
Yeah. This is kind of the first time Sydney's like, damn, I might have put an innocent man in jail, leaving the real killer still out there.
Yeah,
But-
when your best friend thinks that the guy you put in prison is probably innocent, that's not a good look.
Yeah, Tatum tells her to slow her roll because she is starting to sound like a Wes Carpenter movie. We also see Ghostface creeping in the woods next to the house in broad daylight, but that's dumb and I refuse to acknowledge that that happened. We then cut to Randy working at the video store, which I fucking miss video stores.
Yeah, Randy had it made, man. He's a teenager, like a high schooler in the mid-90s, working at a fucking video rental store during, like, the height of video store rentals, and he's, like, a super horror movie fan. Like, he had a good thing going.
Definitely. I tried to get my job at a Blockbuster. They wouldn't hire me for some reason back when I was like 15. Anyway, so we see that this place is packed, probably because of the Woodsboro strict curfew, and Stu shows up to fuck with Randy and invite him to his party. Randy then points out how it is in bad taste that Billy, who is the only suspect, is currently talking to two chicks in the horror section. This prompts a debate about Billy's guilt between the two, with Stu asking Randy what Billy's reason to kill his own girlfriend would be, and Randy says maybe Sydney wouldn't have sex with him. In horror movies, there is always a stupid reason to kill your girlfriend, which he's not wrong. Stu then disagrees, totally taking up for his friend, where he then tells Randy he thinks it's Sydney's dad, especially considering he still hasn't been located. This causes Randy to go off on a horror movie rant, claiming the cops never figure it out until it's too late, and if they would just watch slashers like Prom Night, they would understand the formula and how everyone is a suspect. This, of course, gets everyone's attention, causing Randy to calm down, telling Stu the father is a red herring and the killer is Billy, when he suddenly turns around and finds himself face to face with an angry Billy, who then accuses Randy of watching too many movies, losing his mind, and going on a killing spree, which Randy doesn't deny that totally makes sense.
Yeah, her dad being the ultimate red herring.
Definitely.
That was definitely a really good point. Also, if I was the only suspect in a brutal murder, I would not be hanging out in the slashers, any type of horror movies, but especially slashers. Like, well, I definitely just seems like a bad idea.
I'd stay my ass at home. So after all that, we then cut to Dewey getting an update from the sheriff, who tells him that the cell phone company contacted them today, informing them that the calls to Casey and Sydney both came from Neil Prescott's phone, aka Sydney's dad. And they still can't locate him, which is even more weird considering tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary of his wife's murder, which I just realized, like, he went out of town, leaving his daughter all alone all weekend on the first anniversary of her mom's murder.
Yeah,
Like, what the fuck?
that's pretty fucked up.
You didn't think your daughter needed, like, some comforting that day?
I don't know.
That's so weird.
Maybe he was going out of town to get some comforting, if you know what I mean.
Maybe.
I mean, imagine having your wife not only brutally murdered, but then it slowly coming out that she was fucking all these dudes.
Yeah,
like, that
definitely.
would suck.
So we then jump to later that night where we see Dewey giving Tatum and Sydney a ride to Stu's party, which is at this big ass house all alone in the middle of nowhere with Gail's news van creeping behind. So interesting info about this house. The cinematographer did not want to use this house for the movie because it sits on top of this large hill, making it challenging to hide the filming equipment. Also, the location caused a lot of issues with lighting, causing camera lens flares. Basically, it was really hard to film at this place. They also added a bunch of stuff to the house just for the movie, like that famous stained glass window. They put that in, the red walls, and even the like rickety white picket fence. They added all that stuff. But this does make a lot of sense because when they filmed Scream 5, they actually built a replica of this house on a soundstage, and I assume it was because of all the difficulties filming there.
Yeah. I wonder if it's the same cinematographer. Or if this
I don't know.
cinematographer called the new one and was like, "Hey, man, don't take the job
Yeah,
unless it's on a soundstage."
the filming issues is what got him actually fired from filming. Like, they were having all these problems filming at this house. So when they arrive at the party, we see a ton of people and cars there, and the plan is for Dewey to stay in his police car in the driveway, making sure nothing goes wrong until Sydney and Tatum are ready to head home. Gail, who suspects the killer is here somewhere, and her cameraman Kenny then pull up where she announces her plan to plant a hidden camera in the party. But before she can do this, she runs into Dewey, who immediately takes a liking to her and decides that hanging out with an attractive famous chick is better than sitting in his car for hours alone.
Better than protecting all these teenagers.
Fuck these teens.
He literally tells her not much of a story here. Like, what an awful cop. Like,
Also, like,
not only a cop, but a brother. Because your sister is here. There is like a killer who is murdering all these kids that go to this school. So more than likely it's one of these kids at school. And it's a big party.
I mean, also, too, like, if you're a cop, you definitely shouldn't be, like, taking a fucking reporter around with you while you're investigating what's going on. Like, that's a bad idea.
Yeah, dude, that type of stuff seems like it would go over Dewey's head.
Yeah.
Like the character Dewey.
So Dewey and Gail head into the party for a bit just to check on things, where Gail finds the perfect opportunity to hide her hidden camera right between the VCR and TV, which gives her a direct view at the whole living room, the front entrance, and the hallway that leads to the kitchen. The only problem is when she gets back out to the van, Kenny tells her there is a 30-second delay. Tatum then heads to the garage to get a couple beers from the fridge, and apparently it must be pretty cold in there because her nipples are very noticeable through that green shirt. I imagine
nippy out, nipply out.
nipply
here.
out. I imagine Ghostface like going to stab her in the chest, and the knife blade breaks from how hard the nipples are. So once she grabs the beer, she turns around to discover Ghostface standing there blocking the door, and it becomes immediately clear that Tatum isn't taking this seriously, as she assumes this is once again Randy fucking around. It's like everybody in this movie is like, this is Randy. Tatum then
Ghostface didn't like accidentally cut her shirt open. So Shit, I meant to stab you.
Tatum then walks over to him and sarcastically says, "Please don't kill me, Mr. Ghostface. I want to be in the sequel," where he then grabs her arm and slowly runs the blade across her skin, causing it to cut through her flesh like butter. And it is at this point where she realizes that this isn't a prank and she is standing face to face with the real killer. Once he begins chasing her, she manages to slam the freezer door in his face, knocking him down and giving her a few seconds to try and escape. But she quickly discovers the door to the house is locked and she must find another way out. After blasting him with a couple of beer bottles, stunning him for a few seconds, she then runs over to the garage door and attempts to crawl through the doggy door. But considering she is a human and not a dog, she struggles to fit, giving Ghostface an idea. Once she's about halfway through, he presses the button, causing the door to open, where we see it begin to retract into the ceiling. And as this is happening, Tatum starts struggling to get free, but unfortunately, she is too late as we then see her head get crushed between the doors and the house.
I love this kill. For some reason, this one always stood out to me as a kid. I always really liked Tatum, and it was probably you. Somebody told me long time ago that Marilyn Manson was dating her after this
I think
movie.
he was married to her.
And yeah, and if they weren't married, they were together for a really long time. And now every time I see her, and specifically this scene, because I was watching this scene when I was told about this, every time I see this scene, I think about her hot ass dating Marilyn Manson's creepy,
Yeah.
like just pale, skinny, thonged up, fucking just weird looking
He
self.
probably looks unattractive naked. Just gonna say that. So after Tatum is killed, we cut back to the party where we can see that because of the curfew, most of the teens have cleared out, leaving only about 10 or so party goers. Sydney then tries to find Tatum so they can leave, but Stu tells her that he hasn't seen her for a while and she must have gotten mad at him and left. I'm surprised Sydney went along with this because, like, how could she leave? They both rode with Dewey. Anyway, Billy then shows up looking to talk to his girlfriend, where they then head up to Stu's parents' room to hash things out. Once they get up there, Billy goes to apologize, but Sid quickly cuts him off, telling him that he was right, she needed to realize who her mom really was, a homewrecker, and she avoided sex because she didn't want to end up like her. And this is where she tells him that she's finally wants to lose that V card right here, right now. If you really pay attention to Billy's dialogue throughout this film, you will realize that he is one of us. He is this huge horror movie fan that makes a lot of references to classic horror films. Like in this scene in particular, he compares his girlfriend to Clarice in Silence of the Lambs.
Are you talking about Randy?
I'm talking about Billy. This is the scene where Billy and Sydney go to fuck.
Oh, yeah. Billy's, but Billy is a little too much like us.
He's too far.
Too far.
He's too far, but it's just took me so long to realize, like, he's just like a hardcore horror fan. The only thing he's missing is like horror tattoos and like t-shirts.
You would think him and Randy would get along.
You would think that.
Because Randy is obviously a really hardcore horror fan as well.
Yeah, Billy just, was
like
so
Randy.
horny for some reason. He decided to start killing people. But
maybe him and Randy don't get along because Randy's got a thing for Sydney.
Maybe.
They've been dating for a long time.
That's a good point.
They could have been friends maybe before this.
But yeah, it's almost like every one of Billy's scenes, he references a horror movie.
Yeah.
A lot of references.
Which is good clues being dropped too.
Because he doesn't look, like, you looking at him, he doesn't seem like a big horror fan.
No, I definitely love the clues being dropped and how they kind of, him going to jail kind of clears his name.
Mhm.
And then we get this whole scene of like Randy outlining like the rules and the virgins. And it's like, even though they clear Billy, he just acts so suspicious throughout this movie. but they do a really genius job of clearing him very early on, and they do it again coming up. It really throws you for a loop.
Well, I think it's supposed to because there's a lot of red herrings in this movie. I mean, you got the dad, you got the sheriff, you got Billy, sometimes Randy. Like, there's a lot of red herrings in this. So while they are fookin', we then cut back to the party where we see the group who is left huddled around the TV watching Halloween when one of the girls makes a comment about Jamie Lee Curtis that really doesn't sit well with Randy. He then informs them that the Virgin is always the one character that could outsmart the killer in horror flicks because it is one of the main rules. One guy then asks what rules he is talking about, and then we get one of the most iconic scenes in the whole franchise as Randy then stands next to the TV and educates everyone on how to survive a slasher film.
Jesus Christ, you don't know the rules?
I have an aneurysm, why don't you?
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. For instance, number 1, you can never have sex. No. Big no-no! Big no!
I'm a dead man.
Sex equals death, okay? Number 2, you can never drink or do drugs. No, the sin factor. It's a sin. It's an extension of number 1. And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.
I'm getting another beer. You want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back.
You see, you push the laws and you end up dead. Okay?
Iconic scene.
Yeah, I love how they're like going back and forth between Sydney and Billy upstairs too, and essentially our main character, our final girl, is giving up her virginity as he's laying out the rules that if you have sex and you lose that virginity, you're gonna die. Like there's always a virgin who survives.
Yep. The fact that Kevin Williamson wrote a good horror film for horror film lovers is one of the things that makes this movie so good. Because a long time, those rules were kind of unsaid. You had to really be a fan of slashers to know those things. And this is, I don't know, maybe it's just me, how I remember it, but this was like the first time that was said out loud.
Well, I think it was the first time it was said out loud in a movie. I think for years people seen movies and, like you would complain, don't do this, don't do that, or, Friday the 13th, if you're smoking weed or having premarital sex, like you're gonna die. But this was, and this is where like the genius meta quality of this movie comes out, is this is the first horror movie, at least that I remember or know of, that horror movies and these rules existed within the movie.
Yeah.
Like the people in the movie also reference these same rules that we know about. And there's even like awesome parts where rules are mentioned that we think are obvious, but then they're broken right after. Like when Sydney says, the stupid girl runs upstairs when she should be running downstairs, but then she gets put in a situation and panics and has to run upstairs.
Yeah, just a genius scene, genius movie. It's just good, man. It's just literally 100% fantastic.
Yeah, it was the meta quality to it that did not exist in any movies that I can think of.
So while Gail watches this from her news van, Dewey comes banging on the door, informing her that someone reported a car in the woods down the road and was wondering if she would like to join him in checking it out, to which she agrees and tells Kenny she will be right back. We then cut back to the party where we see Randy answering the phone, where he then hangs it up, turns around still in shock, and tells everyone that they found Principal Hembry gutted and hung from the goalpost on the football field. The rest of the teenagers don't have the same reaction as him, as we immediately see them get excited, rush out of the house to their cars, and speed off in hopes to see if the body is still there, leaving Randy all alone in the living room, Billy and Sydney upstairs, Gail, Kenny and Dewey outside and stew somewhere on the property. As the drunk teens speed down the road, they almost hit Dewey and Gale, forcing them to jump out of the way, where they roll into the woods, and right as Dewey becomes even more lovesick, Gale interrupts the moment as she spots Neil Prescott's abandoned car. After that, we then jump back to the house where we see Sydney and Billy putting their clothes on when Sydney suddenly asks him who he called from jail. Realizing that Sid might still be thinking he's the killer, he tells her that he called his dad, except for the fact that Sydney saw the sheriff call his dad. The fact that his girlfriend is suspecting him again kind of pisses Billy off, but before he gets a chance to argue with her about it, Sydney spots Ghostface sneaking up behind him. She then tries to warn him, but it is too late because as soon as Billy turns around, he gets stabbed multiple times in the stomach. By the way, that whole, the ghost face, like cleaning the blood off of his knife blade thing, which has like become his signature move, that was thought up to avoid continuity errors. But if you pay close attention to this scene, it did not work very well. It's kind of all over the place.
I love the timing in this scene. How, Billy is obviously like the most sketchy person. Like, our instincts are that Billy could be the killer from the very beginning by the way he acts. They clear his name in the police station. She finally gives it up to him, and then she calls him out on the lie on the phone call. So then as the audience, you're starting to think, okay, maybe he is the killer. And then they give it like this perfect amount of time to get the gears turning that maybe our instincts were right this whole time and Billy was the killer. And then Ghostface comes and fucking stabs him right after.
Very smart move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just a testament to Wes Craven. You can write that in the script all you want, but the timing and everything of how that shot was shot, I love it.
So after killing Billy, Ghostface leaps across the bed to attack Sydney, but she quickly avoids him, running out of the room. Now, it becomes obvious that she isn't super familiar with the layout of the house because Ghostface is able to cut her off before she reaches the stairs, forcing her to barricade herself in the room above the garage. But as he attempts to break down the door, Sydney looks for an escape, quickly realizing she's going to have to go out of the window. As she begins climbing out, though, Ghostface grabs her arm, causing her to fall backwards where she thankfully lands on a boat cover, breaking her fall. And right as she climbs down off of this boat, she spots her best friend Tatum, still hanging from the garage, dead as fuck.
It's a shitty fall to take to look up and see your best friend dead.
Yeah. We then cut back to the living room where a very drunk Randy is still watching Halloween when suddenly Ghostface quietly walks up behind him and he gets ready to strike as we see him raise the knife above his head, preparing to inflict one serious stab wound, when suddenly he hears Sydney yelling for help out front, where he then abandons this idea and chases after her instead. The really cool thing about this scene is Skeet Ulrich really wanted to wear the costume for the kill scenes and was totally bummed when he was told that stunt performers were going to be doing that, but they did let him do this scene in the costume. So yeah, that is Skeet wearing the Ghostface outfit about to stab Randy.
I love the scene where he's about to stab Randy as Randy's yelling at the TV screen.
It's very ironic, yeah.
To tell Lori to turn around, and it kind of makes you realize Randy is the virgin who lives through the killing.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I didn't even think about that.
Although the rules, you
He
think
survives
you
because of
think-
his virginity.
yeah, you think the rules slip. That scene makes you realize that the rules are solid. Like, there may be some cracks that are showing in the rules, but the rules are solid. Randy is the virgin who survives.
I've never put that together.
And he talks about outsmarting the killer and getting lucky at times, and he literally has all this stuff to outsmart the killer, and then he gets lucky here.
Yeah. So Sydney ends up running out to the van where she finds Kenny, who is still watching the live feed from inside. And remember, there is this 30-second delay. So when they see Ghostface on the screen about to stab Randy and Kenny goes to warn him, that has already happened, which is why Kenny gets his throat slashed as soon as he exits the van. I know Kenny isn't like a major character in the story, but he does use his last bit of life to like turn around and tell Sydney there's like this, escape hatch in the back of the van. So props to him for that.
I feel bad for Kenny.
Definitely.
He's got to work with Gail.
Definitely.
She's a bitch. Even in death.
So Ghostface goes to stab Sydney as soon as she slides the door closed, jamming the blade into her shoulder. And while he tries to get in the vehicle, Sydney manages to escape out the back door, where she quickly takes off running towards a barn on the property. So this barn was built by the production because, like I said earlier, the house was on this hill, so they had to build something to hide all the trucks and equipment while shooting. That was like one of the big complaints with picking this house on a hill. So once Gail and Dewey arrive back at the house, they split up with Gail heading to the news van and Dewey drawing his gun and running inside the house. Like I said earlier, absolutely love that they used John Carpenter's Halloween score for a lot of the end of this movie, which again makes perfect sense because it was written to that soundtrack. But yeah, amazing.
I absolutely love that it uses that soundtrack. It was written to that soundtrack, but all that was before they knew the impact that this movie was going to have on horror in the same way that Halloween brought slashers to the forefront.
Yeah, in the late 70s.
Did the same thing in the mid 90s.
Yep.
Like it literally, these two movies changed horror. This is the movie that brought slashers back to the forefront of horror. And they did all this with no idea that any of this was going to happen.
Yeah, they say history repeats itself. So once Gail gets to the van, she doesn't find Kenny's body, but does find his blood, which of course sends her into a panic. She then jumps in the driver's seat and attempts to call the cops, but she is jump scared by Randy, who she hits in the face with the phone. And as she drives away, she discovers the windshield is covered in blood and Kenny is laying dead on the roof of the van. She then puts the pedal to the metal and hauls ass out of there when suddenly Sydney appears in the middle of the road, causing Gail to swerve and crash at the bottom of a hill. Sydney then runs back to the house looking for Dewey when he suddenly comes stumbling out, falling on the porch with a knife in his back, followed by Ghostface. She then tries to hide in Dewey's police cruiser, but that doesn't work, forcing her to fight off yet again another attack. She ends up escaping and grabbing Dewey's gun when suddenly Randy and Stu both come running up, begging her to let them inside. But she plays it smart and says, "Fuck you both," as she slams the door in their faces. And right as Sydney finally gets a second to think, a very injured and bloody Billy comes stumbling down the stairs, causing her to run to his aid. Once he gets up and seems to be feeling a lot better, he gets the gun from her and opens the door, letting Randy in, where a panicked Randy says Stu is flipped out and gone mad. Billy then turns to face him with an evil look on his face and says, "We all go a little mad sometimes," as he then raises the gun and shoots Randy, where he then makes a reference to Psycho, because like I said earlier, he is one of us. He then tells Sydney that the blood on his shirt is actually corn syrup, which is the same thing they used for pig's blood in Brian De Palma's Carrie, pretty much letting her know that he is the killer. But when she turns to run, she slams right into Stu, who is just standing there, and as she begins to beg him for help, he places the voice changer up to his mouth and says in the Ghostface voice, "Surprise, Sydney," revealing that both him and Billy are behind the murders, which honestly totally threw me off the first time I watched it. Like, I know I was a child, but I still thought this was a really good twist.
It is a really good twist. Like all the slashers that we had up until this point, like we have one guy playing the killer. And this was just, I think, revolutionary for the time when it happened. Because right before this, we get Stu and Randy are both blaming each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we know as the audience that Randy is not the killer because he's literally was almost killed on the couch. So if you're paying close attention, most people watching this for the first time says, "Oh my God, Stu is the killer." Like it's Stu. It's been Stu the whole time. And then to get this final like reveal that it is Billy and Stu. It is just was for me the first time I seen that, mind blowing.
Yeah, definitely. So the two killers then corner her in the kitchen where they begin to taunt her, prompting her to tell them that they will never get away with this. But the killer duo are about to drop an atomic bomb on her, as Billy then says, "Tell that to Cotton Weary," informing her that they raped and killed her mother, framing Cotton, which totally leaves Sydney stunned. She then asks him why they did this, and Billy informs her that her mom was a, quote, slutbag whore who flashed her shit all over town like she was Sharon Stone or something. He then goes even deeper, explaining that her mom was also having an affair with his father, which his mom found out about, causing her to abandon him and his dad. Maureen was fucking Cotton and Billy's dad at the same time.
At the same
And
time.
probably not Neil.
Yeah, she definitely got around town, that's
Yeah.
for sure. But yeah, man, just like not only did you just drop the 2 killer bomb on us, but then like you're not even thinking about Cotton Weary or any
No.
of this. So then you get this like right after you get this bomb dropped, and it's like, damn, the end of this movie's really fucking good.
Yeah, I think this is better than the two killer reveal.
Like, Billy is set up to be, like, the red herring, and then they clear him in jail, and then that slips a little bit right after he gets stabbed. Then you're 100% Billy's not the killer, he's been attacked by the killer. Then he is revealed as one of the killers, and then you find out that not only is Cotton Weary innocent, but Billy murdered his girlfriend's mom a year ago to the day.
Yeah, wild, wild. Stu then pipes up informing Sydney that she's no longer a virgin, so now she's got to die because those are the horror movie rules. But before he gets a chance to respond, he tells her that they have a big surprise for her, as he then walks to the hallway and returns with her father restrained and gagged, which is why that scene in the beginning was so fucking smart. Because while Billy was hiding in her room, her dad was talking about like what time he was leaving in the morning and all this shit, allowing them to know what time they needed to grab him before he left for the airport.
Yeah.
Because she even says, "You've never come through my window before. Like, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
And it was all to get this bit of information.
Yeah.
It's very
yeah,
smart.
Very, very, I've watched this movie a lot of times before I put that together.
Yeah, definitely. Billy then tells her that because it's after midnight, it's officially the 1-year anniversary of them killing her mother, which almost brings her to her knees. Stu then places the voice changer and cell phone in Neil's pocket, revealing their intention to frame him for the murders, with the idea that the cops will assume that he snapped and went on a killing spree, which would never really hold up when it comes to forensics, but yeah. But in order for this to really work, Billy and Stu must make it look like they are survivors, so they then attempt to stab each other, which, as it turns out, is a much better plan on paper than in real life, as we then see them both go a little too deep.
This could be a good plan, but bad plan when 2 psychos do it to each other.
Yeah.
Like 2 people who are serial killers are trying to take turns slightly almost serial killing, but not quite. Like, no, that has a lot of chances to go bad,
Yeah.
especially when both of these people have now stabbed people to death
Also,
very recently.
probably don't use a 12-inch hunting knife. Like,
Yeah.
get something smaller.
Yeah, maybe the gun. The gun would have been a
Yeah,
good thing,
yeah.
like shoot each other in the leg or something, so you don't have to worry about the 12-inch hunting knife.
Yeah.
It's made for stabbing stuff really deep. It's crazy to me to think that so we know that Stu killed Tatum because Billy was upstairs at the time with I think at that time he was upstairs. So Stu killed his girlfriend, essentially. Even with those hard-ass nipples, he
Yeah.
still brought himself to murdering.
Well, unlike Billy, he's seen those nipples many times.
Yeah, I guess.
He was tired of them.
Yeah, maybe they weren't good-looking nipples or something, I don't know. No, how you could do that. But also, Casey Becker was his ex-girlfriend. Yeah, that leads to I know you said there's a theory that we'll talk about on the Patreon.
Oh, yeah, I can't wait to go over it. Very interesting.
But I think outside of the information that you may have that I don't know about, that Stu killed both of them. I think he's got a thing for killing girls that he has had a relationship with.
Yeah, that's true. So after this, Stu goes to grab the gun off the counter, but quickly realizes that it is now missing when suddenly Gail steps out, cocking the pistol and holding them both at gunpoint. She then says, "I got a headline for you. The reporter left for dead in the news van, comes to, stumbles on YouTube dipshits and saves the day." But unfortunately for her, Billy knows something that she doesn't. The safety on the gun is still on, which she discovers as she goes to shoot him, when he then kicks the shit out of her, knocking her out. He then points the gun at her head, but right before he fires, Stu alerts him that Sydney is now missing. They then rush around trying to find her, and this is where we realize that Stu is bleeding pretty bad and has now started coughing up blood. But right as he starts to tell Billy this, the phone rings, where they are confronted by Sydney, who is now using the voice changer, as she tells them that she already called the cops. Stu then takes the phone while Billy searches the house for her, and this is where we get another legendary scene as Billy snatches the phone away from Stu, screams at Sydney, and then throws it, hitting Stu in the back, where he immediately yells, "You hit me with the phone, dick," which, of course, was not planned or done on purpose. According to Skeet Ulrich, his hands were covered in slippery fake blood, causing the phone to slip out of his hand, hitting Lillard in the back. We then cut to Billy searching the house, where he decides to check the hallway closet when suddenly Sydney, now wearing the Ghostface costume for some reason, comes popping out, where she stabs Billy in the shoulder with the tip of the umbrella, causing him to drop the gun and fall to the ground.
It's really worth noting here that Halloween is playing, and the scene that is playing is Laurie Strode hiding in the closet. And right after that, Sydney jumps out of the closet and attacks Billy.
I never noticed
showing that Sydney is a different kind of final girl. She, instead of hiding, she is going on the attack.
Yeah, also, so his reaction to the second stab from the umbrella was real because the stunt person actually missed the little protective pad that he had under his shirt, causing her to actually stab him with the metal tip. Once Billy is down, Stu then comes running around the corner, where he quickly attacks Sydney, causing them to fight it out in the living room. And after taking some serious hits, Sydney is able to gain the upper hand, where she stands up, pushing the TV off its stand, where it falls on Stu's head, killing him. Or so they say. Once she finishes Stu off, she then gets attacked by Billy again, but right before he stabs her, Gail shoots him with the gun, killing him. Or so we think. Now, with the two killers dead, Sydney gets up and helps a now wounded Randy off the floor, where they both join Gail by the front door. Sydney takes the gun as Randy tells her to be careful, because this is the moment when the supposedly dead killer comes back to life for one last scare. When suddenly Billy pops up, but is quickly shot in the forehead, as Sydney says, "Not in my movie." Sydney and Randy then untie Neil, as we then cut to the morning, where first responders have arrived, and it turns out Dewey is still alive, which is only because it scored really high with the test audiences. He was originally supposed to be dead.
Well, I'm glad they kept him alive. They should have kept him alive in 5, too.
Yep.
That was a fucking drastic mistake.
We
I also hate, I gotta say, I hate Sydney's line, "Not in my movie." the only cheesy thing. I hate it.
I don't hate it, but I hate her wearing the Ghostface outfit.
I hated that too.
Yeah.
Yes. But why she put the fucking outfit on is beyond me.
Yeah, I don't know.
It seems like a waste of time in a situation where you're trying to get away from being murdered.
Also, how do you explain that to the cops? They're like,
Yeah.
well, your DNA's in there too. And she's like, well, I did it to prove a
Scared.
point, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, but she says not in my movie, but he's already popped up and did his scare. He's already did his little pop up and scare.
I know, it doesn't
Like,
make sense.
She should have shot him in the head, like
And then said it.
double tapped him, and then said not
Yeah.
in my movie. Then I would have liked it. It would have
Agreed.
made sense.
Agreed. We then see a battered and bloodied Gail stand in front of Stu's house holding a microphone as she begins reporting several more local teens are dead, bringing an end to the mystery of these mass killings that have terrified this peaceful community like the plot of some scary movie. And that is the end of Scream.
I do love Randy calling out the horror tropes one more time at the end, though, when he says this is when the killer jumps up and makes one
Yeah.
more scare. If you think about it, Randy was spot on the entire movie. You know, he didn't see that he was going to be the virgin teen that survived, but I mean, from the very beginning, when he's saying that Billy is the number one suspect and is acting very suspicious. The red herring, the dad being the ultimate red herring, like he called that out very early
he nailed
on.
it.
Like all the tropes and stuff he talks about are spot on. Like they should have listened to Randy. They'd have been good to go.
Well, that's why Dewey goes to Randy pretty much immediately in Scream 2, and it was like, I need you to tell me who the killer is.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so ratings and kill count. We got a total of 7 kills. We have Steve, who is gutted by Ghostface, Casey, who is stabbed, choked, gutted, and hung from a tree, Principal Henry, who was stabbed multiple times, Tatum, who had her head crushed by a garage door, Kenny, his throat was slashed by Ghostface, Billy was stabbed with an umbrella, shot twice by Gail, and Sydney. Stu had his head crushed by a TV, and we have kind of a bonus number 8, which is Maureen, who was raped and murdered by Stu and Billy. All right. Favorite kill. All right, so my favorite kill is hands down pretty easy. It's Casey. It's iconic. It's brutal. The full body cast they did for her hanging from the tree is amazing. My number 2 is going to be Steve. That shot of his guts oozing out while sitting in that chair was fantastic. Not to mention, he's the first kill of an amazing movie, of an amazing franchise. And just the fact that it goes along with the rest of that intro. Yeah, hands down. Pretty easy for me.
So I went with Casey. Her kill literally sets the tone for the whole movie. The fucking slow motion shot of her fucking like getting chased down by Ghostface. Her getting like so close to her parents but just falling short. Her mom being able to hear her through the phone. And then the way her body's like fucking strung up. It's all fucking amazing. By far the best kill. Best scene of the movie. Number 2, I almost went with Tatum because the kill in the garage is such like a memory that's always stuck out to me, and I do love like the after of her like hanging after Sydney falls and looks.
I think the after is better than the kill.
Yeah, the after is what really like it makes it look awesome, but I do have to go with Steve, man. Him being disemboweled
Definitely.
is fucking awesome.
It is awesome.
Like you can't never pass up on a good disembowelment in a slasher.
Yeah, it's hard to put a head crush by a garage door up against getting your guts fucking put in your lap. Like that's hard.
I think you made a really good point too with him being the first kill of the franchise, the first
Yeah.
Ghostface kill.
Definitely.
outside of Sydney's mom, who we don't get to
We
see.
still haven't got to see.
But I also don't think that they were dressing up as Ghostface when they killed Sydney's mom. He may have, but I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. I've seen that debated a lot. All right, so film rating. Easy, easy, easy. Gave it a 5. This is an amazing movie, as we've said multiple times. I love the characters. All the characters are good. The movie references, the killer's design. It has a fantastic killer reveal with like multiple fucking bombs dropped. I love the 90s of it all. It's very nostalgic for me. This is 100% a slasher made for slasher fans. I don't think it could have been done any better. This is hands down one of the best horror films ever exist, man. It's a 5.
Yeah, I gave it a 5 too. A horror movie highlighting the rules of the slasher genre while staying true to the rules, yet leaving the audience still guessing the whole time. To me, this movie is a love letter to horror and the slasher genre. I thought the story was great. The foresight to have the movie mirror Halloween, having no idea that this movie was gonna have the same effect that Halloween had in real life is just amazing to me. Cinematography gives us some really, really cool shots. More specifically, though, the cinematography, if you pay close attention, kinda laid the ground for how a lot of horror movies in the late '90s were gonna be shot. Same thing with, like, the movie poster, the
Oh,
iconic
yeah.
movie poster.
Uh-huh.
You know, so many movies took things from this movie, and it just changed the genre overall. I love the score. I definitely think this was Wes Craven at his best. We've gotten that quite a few times. Wes Craven did some amazing things, but it's a toss-up between this and the original Nightmare on Elm Street, but those by far, this is up there with that movie,
Definitely.
if not the best. And I think what might put this over the top for me is the nostalgia. You know, us being kids whenever this happened, I remember going into the Walmart and Halloween stores. Even I feel like back then, even like the Dollar Tree and seeing ghost face masks everywhere, going trick or treating and seeing just ghost face masks everywhere.
Yeah, we didn't get to live through the, humongous boom of Freddy, being like this figure, right? But we did get to live through the ghost phase. Pretty much what a lot of like 13-year-olds are getting to experience right now at Art the Clown.
I would compare it, yeah, Art the Clown is a good one, what's happening now. Halloween, what Halloween did, and it being this groundbreaking movie, and I'm sure there was a ton of Michael Myers people, like, just dressed up for Halloween. This is the one that we got to live through in our childhood, and I remember buying, like, even do you remember the ghost face candle I got when I was,
Yeah.
like, 9? I
Mm-hmm.
had to have it from Walmart. Mom got it for me, and you would burn it, and it would bleed.
Yeah, blood would like come out of the
Uh,
eyes and shit.
yeah, just all the awesome, like, shit that we got to see. Yeah, this one's really, really special to me. I think this caught lightning in a bottle, and it forever changed the face of horror.
Definitely. Well, that is our opinion on Scream. Once again, we thank you guys for listening. Please give us a follow or like if you enjoy the show. Check out the website, check out the socials, hit up the store. Now that it's winter, we need to probably make some hoodies. Tell a friend, a family member, or your sexually frustrated boyfriend about the show, and we hope to see you next time.